Hi everyone, welcome to Logi Play for another panel, this time about the future of competitive gaming. We have a lot of topics to cover and of course, amazing guests for me to go through all this. We're going to take a walk through memory lane about esports, talking about the grassroots, the evolutions of the field, and of course the future of competitive gaming when it comes to technological advancement, gears, what do the pro want, what do the organizations want as well. And well, let's not waste more time here. I would like to introduce my first panelist here, Brent Barry, head of marketing at Pro Series. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And then we have Jacobo, Ramos, head of partnership at G2 Esports. Thank you so much for joining me as well.
Thank you, Laure.
And Adam, top laner for team BDS. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We have, as I said, a lot of topics to cover tonight. So I think the first question I want to ask you guys is, how did you get into esports?
For me, kind of accidentally, I guess, maybe. The world of gaming for me really started with time at Sega and then at AMD. And my first big events were early days of QuakeCon.
Wow.
And early Counter-Strike and being a part of that scene back in the early 2000s. So fun times.
Fun times, and you've seen a lot, it feels, throughout the different titles.
Yeah, a lot has changed over the years.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's something we all have in common when it comes to how did we get into esports? Randomly, it was kind of spontaneous. Was it the same for you, Jacobo?
Yeah, for me it was back in 1998 in Spain.
Yeah.
We had a lot of LAN events where we just for fun and volunteering, basically no pay, no anything. We just created tournaments, 700 to 1,000 people participating in general. Mm-hmm. And that's basically the story of how we got into gaming and what is now esports, right? Like, it's not like a 10-year thing, esports. It's like more than 20 years that it has been evolving into what it is right now.
I mean, that's the thing, esports has been here for so long, and yet we have still new faces joining every year and every season. Adam, you were one of them a couple years ago. How did you end up here? How did you become a pro player?
I mean, I would say my story is probably the same as a lot of pro players in my situation. Is when you're young, you start to play a certain game, and then you start to play this game for years, and then at some point you become good enough that teams want to recruit you in a way when you never heard about esports before. And this is basically how I just got into it.
Amazing.
And never left.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't want to leave, basically.
Yeah,
and it keeps on evolving, and I feel like that's the most interesting aspects of esports is the growth and how much the industry changed over a decade, 2 decades even, as you were saying. Jacobo, I want to ask you first, when you think about the origin of esports, the first time you saw an event, the first time you saw a team perform, what is the first memory that comes to your mind when you come to think about the early days of esports?
Early days must be what is now called EWC. Back in the days, it was called ESWC, and they were like doing LAN events around the world, doing qualifiers physically for like a big event, right? Or like a QuakeCon. There were like only 1 or 2 events like this per year, and that was like a big event. And when you saw them broadcasted on YouTube back in the days with like the lowest quality you can imagine, but it was good enough for us to be like, oh my God, I want to be there one day. Like, because we all played by video games, technically speaking. And back then, 2000s, it was like, damn, so many people watching video games, 1,000 people, right? For us was like, oh my God, 1,000 people watching a final of Unreal Tournament or Quake, and you're like, oh my. Now we have, I don't know, 100,000 in one stadium. I don't know, that the growth is too much.
It's crazy because you can see the growth. You're mentioning the audience, you're mentioning the setups, the LAN events, you were mentioning Quake events earlier. What is your first memory you have from esports?
Probably a QuakeCon, the giant CRTs and all the vanilla-colored computers everywhere, and fans being in ballrooms at a ballroom in a hotel in random parts of cities, and they were just so small comparatively. You had shoutcasters on Winamp instead of anything ever really live. And if you wanted to find out what happened, you had to go figure out which forum to go to download things. And I mean, going from that to where now everything is live broadcast is just, it's incredible. Have you known these dark times of esports, as I'm going to call them, the first LAN events?
I probably wasn't even born yet, I would say. So, nah. I mean, me, like esports, to me, it's only from 2020
Yeah.
or 2019, sorry. And it just meant to me like SKTT1, the team from Korea. This is probably the first memory that I ever had in esports. Because when I got into esports, like professionally, I was not even watching any type of esports before, so I actually had no clue. I just knew the best team and the best player, which is Faker. And besides that, I just needed time to get used to it.
I think it's crazy when you think of esports and the fact that I think from 5 or 10 years ago, people were thinking about a bubble. Is it a trend? Is it a bubble? Is it something that's going to stay? Is it something that people are going to get tired of? Is esports going to stay, actually? So when you think about the grassroots events that we had at the beginning of esports, to, as you mentioned earlier, having events hosting hundreds, thousands of people with millions of people watching, how would you describe this evolution?
Wow. I mean, the grassroots piece of esports is the real strength. I mean, that's the real strength of all sports. It's the fan bases that really enjoy it and the people who just, live and breathe to play their games and be a part of these different groups and fandoms. And I think a lot of us find ourselves in these kinds of competitions. And as that's changed, it's just become... There's a line from one of our videos. It's like it goes from the guy down the street to the friend across the world. Yeah. And that's the thing that's really changed for me, I think, is suddenly the experience has gone from kind of this local, small community to being something that opens up the entire world to people and games and competitors. That's what's really cool to me.
And I feel like it's this community aspect and the fact that people were connected together through Twitch chat, through several platforms that mainstream media was not using. I feel like that's also what contributed to the development of esports. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think the most contributing factor in the last years has basically been the creation of small communities that get together and enjoy one thing at the same time. And that's why Twitch and all these online streaming platforms were like the pinnacle of how esports became what it is. Back days, we had companies like Own3D, before even Twitch, that they were basically doing the same, right? And thanks to them, it kind of became more of a mainstream audience thing, more than a niche kind of like, I have to find a stream to watch this thing that I have to be, and which forum is this going to be in, and if you were not in that bubble, you didn't know these things were happening. Now people that perhaps like watching something about gaming, they found, oh, they have a competitive tournament going on about the game I used to play. I'm going to watch about what it is, and then you get hooked into it, and it's like, okay, I have been watching Worlds for 17 years, or I don't know, so something like that. So that's the biggest impact.
Is this how you came into playing watching League of Legends rather, Adam? You were playing the game and then you were like, oh, maybe people are playing the game. There's a world championship. How did that happen? And how did you first react to this huge production about the game you were playing?
I mean, personally, like I was not like really surprised.
Yeah.
Like to me, at first, gaming was mostly a way for me like to escape school in a way. It's not that I didn't like going to school. It's just like I needed like a way out after that. Yeah. After I go back to my home, basically, just like a safe place where I could say whatever without getting, like getting flamed or something in a way. So, like this was really the safe play, and also you can see that, like mentality have switched also in a way where probably like when I was in high school, I was playing a lot, and I could be like, you could say that I was the geek of the school in a way. And right now, I have the feeling that you don't say that anymore to a guy that plays a lot, because this became so mainstream that it became so normal, when before it was actually just not normal. You were just a geek that just don't know what to do with his life. And this is probably like the main evolution, and it also translates into the big events that we can see now with dozens of thousands of people watching, either from home or actually going straight into events, offline events, and this is just amazing.
I love this aspect, honestly, that you just mentioned, Adam, because Brent, for you, on your side, is that what contributed to changing the stigma about gamers? Maybe Brent associated with esports events, the fact that it became more mainstream, as Adam said.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely became more mainstream. it was always, I always felt like those events were kind of the safe place also, where people had a passion for something and they found their communities. I mean, I saw people become IT professionals because they were, managing the servers at an esports event or, got into a job like I have or Jacobo, going from those pieces into something. That mainstreaming of it just, I don't know, it opened up so many doors and opportunities for people.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see how it becomes more acceptable and accepting. I think there's always that, some people feel uncomfortable and they find this community and then suddenly they realize, wait, there's a whole global audience for this.
Yeah, that's what I tell people usually. If you don't know esports, at least come to events. Try and discover it through events, and I feel like it's the best entry and the best understanding that you can get from esports. Something that we haven't touched on yet is the evolution when it comes to technology. And you were mentioning broadcasting, but I also want to mention the way players play, the gear they had. I think about esports with StarCraft in Korea in the 90s, the monitors that they had, the keyboards that they had. When you look at the gear that we have today and how much it changed and how much it, I think, changed the perception that gamers have and also their experience playing the game. What has been the biggest improvement for you guys when it comes to technology and how much things change in that department?
Oh, wow. I mean, so much has changed. Yeah, I mean, when you go back that far, I mean, look, one of the biggest evolutions that really happened with, especially with Pro Series, was the introduction of our wireless technology. And that was something that was uncomfortable for a lot of people, the idea that wireless could be good enough for competition. And there were so many doubters, and we were finally able to prove that it was as fast or faster than wireless. And it just offered so much freedom. That was something that really validated the work we were doing within Pro Series of trying to help evolve how people played. And then you have other things like the switch technology that are in keyboards and the way headsets are able to help you communicate and be really comfortable. I mean, all of those pieces, as we started focusing on the need of the athlete, of the esports professional, it meant that it kind of opened our own eyes to how we could improve things. And it's been really cool because there's always something else that we can do to help improve. Can you describe me what your first setup was? And how many times did you change gear before finding the perfect setup that helps you compete at the best level today, for instance?
I mean, probably, I had the family laptop that probably a lot of people have when they start playing. It had not even battery. You had to plug in the computer to be able to play. And then when the computer was completely dead, my family had to buy another one. And then it was a bit better, so it helped me play better. Then when this one was dead, I had another one, this time a gaming one. So I felt like the improvement, basically, like the evolution. I was playing even better when I had just better gear, basically. And then when this laptop was gone, I switched to my first actual computer, like a PC, with I don't know the English word, but with monitor and the thingy, rectangle.
The PC, the unit.
Yeah, the PC. Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, just the PC.
We're in Paris, so.
Yeah. I started using a mouse as well before I was playing mostly on the mouse pad, and so yeah, every time I had a new gear, I was playing way better. And the gear that I'm using right now, I only started to use it 1 year ago. And this was when I the mouse that I was always using died. So I had to find an emergency one for a competitive game. And I found Logitech one. It was when you guys released the super light one. And since then, I'm only using it. It's actually a real story. And I'm pretty satisfied with it.
Shout out to Logitech, thank you guys. And it's interesting because I feel like every pro player is going to have different needs, and in every IP they're going to have different specificities. Is it something you guys think about, and how much you implement this in the products that you launch?
Yeah, I mean, we meet with hundreds of pro players every year when we start looking at different products that we want to produce. And we try to get their feedback into that design process. And whether it's a League of Legends player or Valorant or Counter-Strike, whether it's a male or a female, We try to understand what their specific needs are, and then we try to figure out how can we address that, or in some cases, it's how do we teach a player how to better use the gear that they already have. But it's super important to understand what those specific needs are. Like lightweighting for us was all about understanding the physiology of the arm and trying to make something that was more usable for longer periods of time for players. So there's always something to learn there.
From a G2 perspective, I mean, I'm guessing that it's really important to have a gear provider that's going to be listening to every need that you guys have and the multiple needs that you guys have, depending on the lineups, the game, and everything. How was it a match with Logitech, actually?
So, I mean, back in the days,
Yeah.
we always look up the big brands to just collaborate with. And obviously, there is no bigger brand than Logitech in the peripheral space, right? It was not like a match we could do from the very beginning. When we started in 2015, honestly speaking, we were not a match for Logitech. We were too small. We were starting, so we had some other companies. But we were always looking for someone that could fulfill the desire of G2 of being the top one organization in the world. And you need a top-class partner in the world to do that. And there's only one viable option right now, and back in the days, which is Logitech. And they share the same ethics that we do, and they share the same work experience that we do. So it was like, it took us a couple of years to kick off, but it was just a natural choice, right? Like the professionalism they do with our players and the technologies they introduce into the products, they take every single piece of advice or feedback that we give them serious, and that makes a difference for us, and makes the players also feel the desire to use their gear, right? Because they feel heard, they feel that they care about them. And at the end of the day, it's not a match made in heaven, but they all try to make it.
It's like any relationship, you have to work on it and find ways for it to work, I guess.
Always, always. I mean, we really approach it, we want to be the best partner we can possibly be to teams. And in order to do that, it means not just listening and understanding, but it means collaboratively designing our gear with the players. So we have to understand what they need. We have to talk to Jacobo and Adam and understand what they're looking for, and then try to do our best to meet that. But it's really about trying to be really good partners and making sure that, you know, that we can fill those needs, whether it's gear or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like a marketing transactional action where it's like, okay, how much money here, how much money there, what do we get, what do you get? It's more about, okay, so how do we evolve what you have into something new? Like, why is this mouse good, but how can we make it better? And our players is like the key aspect on that. It's like, okay, well, we think that this mouse is good, but, and then they is what they need, right? It's like they need that but to actually make the changes of the products, and that's why they have been so successful in the last product releases they have been doing. They listen, and they are the best at listening and then executing after that. They might not be the fastest, but they have a reason for it. It's because they want to be the best at it. So,
depending on whether you're going to, I mean, when you're going to work with different orgs, I'm thinking that you're going to have different ways to approach things. When it came to G2, as you guys said, it took a bit of time. What were the difficulties in the early days to actually make it the successful relationship that you guys have today?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there were so many difficulties. It really was, first of all, you have to find partners that are willing to grow with you, you know? Like Jacobo said, a word that to me is important. It can't just be transactional. You know, there's plenty of people you can work with, and we wanted to find people that shared our vision for a better world of play, and that were willing to really engage and work with us. There are teams that don't want a deep technology partnership, and there are teams that really do, and G2 was one of those that made it clear that they understood and wanted to be involved in what we were doing. And it became a relationship that really was in many ways foundational for us, because we learned a lot of lessons. They would teach us how to be a better partner. And I think because we came kind of with an open mind or open heart trying to understand how to do that, we were able to learn. And I believe along the way, we also helped teach them how to be a better partner for other companies as well. You know, there's a lot to be said for just the willingness to grow with somebody. So that was probably the most important thing, was just that openness, you know?
Adam, when it comes to you, what are you going to be looking for when it comes to gear? When it comes to a specific mouse, a specific headset, a specific keyboard? Like, what are the factors? What are going to be the specificities that you're going to be looking for? For instance, I have small hands, so I need a small mouse. I have long nails usually, so I need a keyboard that's going to help me playing in that situation. Do you know exactly what you need to perform?
Yeah, I mean, you also need to take into account like your specificities as a human being and what you need to perform. Personally, I have small hands, so what I need is a small mouse, and weight is also really important for me as a player, because the more weight you have, the more power you need to put to make an object move, to make your mouse move. And so this can affect like milliseconds of an action in-game can actually be really important. So all those little optimization that you can actually have, you actually need them as a pro player, and same for the headset. It's more about like freedom, the wireless headset that you guys have, the fact that you're actually able to just move around your house, apartment, whatever, and just do what you gotta do, and still having the headset on, talking to your friends or anything, is probably like the freedom of a player. Like to me, a player is more like being free in whatever you can do. So this relates to that.
From the experience of working with G2, Jacobo, similar to what Adam just said, I'm thinking among all the players you have from different IPs, you must have like 1 billion feedback. How do you filter all this or organize all this to keep on working with Logitech and collaborating the way you guys do?
In general, we have our chats. We know what Logitech is cooking. We know when is it happening, and then they have a very specific program to get feedback from us. So we just align agendas, and they take all the team's considerations into play. They have products that are more focused towards one specific genre of games. They have other products specific for other. I mean, you can mix match, but in general, like some models are more focused towards a first-person shooter, some are for MOBAs, and of course they also take into consideration if it's a male player, if it's a female player, what is the audience, what is the target. In general, they take every single piece of information, and we just help them just get that extra little detail that they need to make the product better. And sometimes it takes years, right? Like this, I think the mouse that I think people is gonna say today has been a work in progress for many years, where we have participated with Logitech extensively on it, and it has been through many, many members of G2, for example. So for us, it's always a constant work.
I'm wondering how much of a challenge it is for you then, because throughout so many different collaborations, and we're just touching on the pro gaming sphere here, not even creators or anything, but you have a really demanding audience and really demanding partners and players, which is the best, but how do you make sure that you're always going to meet their needs in that sense?
I mean, we always say that we're trying to create gear that meets their specific needs. And we do that, like, we don't just talk to an expert like Jacobo, who is very valuable information. We also go and talk to all the individual players. And so we'll spend time with all the individuals on teams, with G2, with other teams like BDS, in different regions, with like different genders. So we go through lots and lots of different players to understand. But it's really trying to listen specifically to their needs. And it's not just me. It's we have engineers and designers and researchers and all different kind of people who are coming with us to engage, recording the sessions and making sure that we understand every little piece of it. And it's also like studying the way that players hold specific gear, how they're using it, what kind of results and performance they're seeing. It's pretty extensive. But I wouldn't say that it's like, it's not so much that it's difficult,
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting for so many of us. Like the insight that you get to experience and understand when you really engage that way, for people who obsess on making the perfect products for human beings, it's incredibly insightful. It gives us a chance and an opportunity, like the like most high performance users of any of our gear are these people. And so getting their feedback is really exciting for us.
So in that sense, I know that you have not collaborated yet with BDS, but that's something that you wish to do in the future. Any glimpse on how you want this collaboration to go? What are the hopes for BDS compared to G2, for instance?
Our relationship with BDS is really exciting and it's really new. And so we're really excited to get to start on that journey. For us, what it really means is, number one, making sure that the players of BDS understand the gear that we have. That it's not just one or two mice, that we have a whole selection of different gear. And then as they get familiar with what we offer, to get in one-on-one with them to understand their preferences. And so that piece is exciting because when we have new opportunities with new teams, it means we're going to have new insights. Or maybe we just confirm that something that we did in the past was right or wrong, but just getting that new opportunity is so helpful for us. Like getting new insight and new information, just helps us improve. So that's the exciting thing. Expanding our relationships and getting new players just helps us,
Add-on specific mouse in 2025 to play top lane. I don't know, if you think about collaboration and having a specific item that would be designed for you, what would you be looking for?
Probably.
Take notes.
I'd say probably the ideal keyboard. I think you guys, I'm pretty satisfied with the mouse you guys have actually. The wireless pretty light as well, super light as it's called. But to me, I'm still looking for that one keyboard that I still haven't found. So that would be ideal.
What is? Yeah. Go on.
We have some stuff that we're announcing today. We're really excited about, and some new technology. Again, it's developed with pro players. And we hear from players like League of Legends players about what they need so they can be more responsive and more, they can be faster and more accurate. And that's what we're trying to design for. So we're really excited to be announcing in just a little while. Wow, it's getting close now to being able to talk about all of the new sets of products. But hopefully the new keyboard, the new Pro X, is going to be the one you love.
I'm wondering if there's specific types of player, whether it's FPS players or MOBA players, that are going to be more demanding when it comes to gear. It's actually a question for the two of you.
I'll tell you that typically the FPS players are more focused on the performance of their mouse. There is a lot more movement that's happening in control that's based around their mouse movement and need for accuracy. And if you just look at the way they move their arms is different. An FPS player usually has a lot more range of motion. And so there are some different needs that happen there. Whereas a lot of the MOBA players traditionally have been much more focused on kind of the fast actions and needs for a responsive keyboard. But it all kinds of starts to blend together.
Yeah.
It's everybody has kind of similar needs of just wanting to be as fast, precise. They want to beat the guy in front of them.
Do you think it's a matter of habits rather than technology itself, and players are more used to using X or Y type of technology, but in the end it just blends together?
I don't know if it's so much that.
Yeah.
We all have our habits. We do know that players take some time to adjust to new gear because we develop muscle memory. I stare at my keyboard while I'm playing League of Legends because I don't know where all my keys are when I'm pushing them, and I guarantee you he doesn't. Guarantee he doesn't look at his keyboard once. And so there are a lot of differences of how things happen, but we all need to take that time to really learn and understand get to know our skills.
Jacobo, similar question to earlier, the specificities between different esports players from different IPs and the gears that they use.
Yeah, it's pretty much what Brent said, right? FPS players in general, they develop the biggest muscle memory you can imagine in terms of mouse movements. So they require the most precise mouse. And that doesn't mean that the mouse has to be precise, but it's their perfect combination with their hand, their shape, the way they hold the mouse, the weight, shape combination, the mousepad even being used, how much it glides, how much the friction affects over time. Some players, they don't want to play with new mousepads. They have like a break-in period where it's like, oh, it's a new mousepad, I don't want to play with it. I need to play at home like 2 weeks with it until I can bring it into a tournament. So the mousepad has to be used for them to perform because they are used to play with a used mousepad. So yeah, it's very different, but at the end of the day, kind of products overlap because games become more technical. And a StarCraft game, at the end of the day, it was just a button mashing, keyboard machine, where the mouse was like transactional of like sending units here and there, one click away. Now all the games is like, oh, you have to aim, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to use the keyboard combinations. So it's like kind of blends a bit together, but in general, FPS is going to be like super mouse focused, MOBAs super keyboard focused in general.
When I look at the evolution of gear, and we mentioned this earlier, for me, the big change has been coming from wired to wireless, wireless gear especially. And I feel like, I mean, me being the first when it came out during the first years, I was like, I don't see a way in which it's not going to be, I mean, it's going to be as fast as wired equipment. What did it take for you guys to first, I want to say convince people, because I know that you believed in the technology that you guys had, but it comes from like deconstructing like decades of habits of people using wired device.
I would say, I mean, one piece that comes is that misconception about wireless really comes from just poor implementation of wireless technology. And Logitech is obsessive about how we implement this. I mean, we have some amazing RF engineers. The kinds of testing that we do around this technology is way beyond what people are going to experience on stage. Like when we first had our conversations with Riot about making sure the wireless products could be on stage, they were worried about a couple hundred pieces of equipment, and we're testing thousands of RF signals and interference in an anechoic chamber to make sure that it's going to perform perfectly. Nobody does the level of test that we do.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that we knew exactly how our product was going to perform. We didn't have any doubts. So then, like you said, how do you convince everybody? And what we first started doing was just showing people that it is faster than a wired, or as fast as a wired mouse. And that was kind of an interesting eye-opener for a lot of people, to get to run through little demo tests and stuff to see that this was real. But I guarantee you the thing that really flipped everyone were the first pro players winning tournaments with our wireless gear. And I remember the first one was Automatic, Cloud9, I think it was the Boston Major, won something with a wireless mouse, and then the London Spitfire were world champions of Overwatch with our first wireless pro mouse. And those were the moments that it was like, yeah, this is real. And I think there was an avalanche after that of everybody realized they needed to be here as well.
Oh, became believers.
Yeah. That's how that's the kind of disruption that is important in esports and in sport, is like showing people there's a better way to compete.
It is disruptive. I love the use of this word here. Is it the same feeling you guys had at G2, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, we work with other brands before we work with Logitech. And the wireless technology is not anything new that it has been in the last 5 years. I mean, in 2000s, we had wireless technologies for like mouse and keyboard. Obviously, it is not what it is today, thankfully. That's why Logitech is on top of the curve on RF technologies and on wireless. And it was like very disruptive when we signed with Logitech. And they were like, oh, you guys what? We're going to sign with you, but next year we have a big thing coming. And I'm like, what is it? They're like, everything is going wireless. And we are like, nah. No. They're like, well, you will be able to put a cable on it, but we are going wireless. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted, It took some time as well, thanks to them, to convince tournament organizers to allow us to use wireless. But yeah, I think we were one of the first, or if not the first, to use wireless mouse and keyboard on LEC in Europe and win titles with it as well. But it took some time to convince a tournament organizer that this was not a problem and this was actually a benefit for the players.
Would you say that it's the highlight of the latest technological advancements when it comes to gear? Or
It's a great moment. I mean, it definitely is a cool moment, but I don't know if it's so much just the highlight now. I mean, we really look at wireless taught us something that we could, we can listen to the pro feedback and understand their feedback, but it doesn't mean that we take everything the pros tell us to do. Yeah. They don't design our products, they design it with us. So we hear their feedback, we understand their needs, and then we have engineering just experts that can go in and understand how to meet that need. And so things like wireless was one of those. And that really, it taught us that process of designing collaboratively with pro players. And so maybe, I don't know, what would the next one maybe was probably lightweighting of mice. There's probably the next really big one that created another very disruptive moment in the world of esports where all of a sudden mouse weights dropped. I mean, we take a leadership position in a lot of these places because we're willing to innovate along with the players. We're not just doing random things. You know, we're looking at how do we improve the sport and improve the player experience? How do we understand their physiology to make sure that they have longer careers? We look for any of those needs that we can meet because we are in a unique position that we can help improve the sport.
from your side at G2 and org perspective, Jacobo, the highlights of innovation when it comes to performance?
Honestly, I think wireless was a deciding moment in the last 10 years, I will say. I mean, it's more clear than ever. When Logitech did it, everybody else did it. Now, I don't think you can see any product being released without wireless. So I think that was a change in the whole industry. Now, what's to come? Yeah, I mean, it's something that we value a lot, and that's why we are with Logitech for so many years, over 7 years with them, is that when they make a change, it's not just a random change or a trend that they have seen and they want to jump on. They actually investigate fully what is that trend, what it implies, how it impacts the player, the performance. Is it a trend that is just a trend? Is this something that is going to perdure? Is this something good or not? So when they went into making products lighter, they were like, yeah, I mean, it will be too easy to just put holes in a mouse and make it lighter. And I'm like, correct. And it's like, that's why we are not doing it. It's not because it's not easy, it's because we can do it without making holes on it and perhaps conditioning the durability of the mouse and potentially giving room for like dust, particles to get inside and destroy the mouse, right? So they have a reason for it, and they are so good at it that you just have to wait for them.
Adam, from your perspective, even being fairly new, what has been the biggest change when it comes to the way you play, the way performance can be enhanced, the way gear has evolved? What do you think of this?
I mean, the biggest difference is probably also like the mouse wireless, of course, and the monitor lately that tends to have way more FPS just in general. The more FPS you have, the better you see and the quicker you can react, so both are really important.
What I feel like is that it's moving really fast. When you look at the evolution over 20 years and then a decade and then even 5 years, how do you keep up?
I don't know. I mean, we try not to have to keep up. We try to set the tone. You know, we want to be the ones that are innovating. There are plenty of times also when we see things that are happening in the market that we realize, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Or we hear things from players where we think we know the right path, but they tell us they would prefer something else, and so we will try to follow their lead because it's important to meet their needs, not just think we don't know everything. You know? So it's important to understand what the player needs are along the way, and we do a lot of research as well. So it's not just that engagement. There's also a lot of research that goes into it, like lightweighting was research that helped us understand how weight interacts with performance when you go up in weight or when you go down in weight, and we realized that 60 grams was the perfect weight for these shapes. And other things like understanding the difference between men and women in esports and how can we meet the needs of both. And there have been a lot of things that we do. One of the things that is so interesting to me and I don't know, inspirational being at Logitech is the amount of work we do to understand what our customers need. And in this case, it's like the extreme case of the pro athlete and how do we meet that need. So that's, I mean, how do we keep up is we're just really dedicated. We really, really want to understand how we can make an impact.
You touched on one of my favorite topics, which is women playing competitive games.
Yeah.
How much did it influence the approach you have when it comes to building gears and building new mouses, new keyboards?
It's really important. We work with a lot of teams that work with a lot of women. We put a lot of effort into making sure that the teams we engage with are supporting women in esports as well, because we think it's really important. We really believe in having that equal playing field, and the insights that we get from women help us just to design better products. Like you mentioned, having nails or having smaller hands or just different kinds of needs. We want to understand what their needs are so we can meet those as well. And we want to do what we can to make sure that that women in esports have as much opportunity to be competitive and to get into the lights, you know, as men. So it's really important for us. We want to make sure that that equality is there.
Closing thoughts here, Jacobo. It's a really weird question. I'm sorry for this, but what would you like to see in the future of esports when it comes to evolution? When it maybe the way people consume esports, maybe the way you look at performance. What should be the next hit, or what do you want the next hit to be?
Obviously there's a big list of what we want or what we will wish for. In terms of like technology, I think that adapting to body needs is the most important thing in general. Logitech keeps learning every time they release a product, different things like ergonomic impacts of weight, impacts of like moving the mouse. They go far and beyond what any other company can go to understand what it means to play with a mouse 10 hours a day, right? If you ask them, they will create ridiculous things to just test how fast a mouse can go until it breaks. So they know what they're doing on that. I think that people need to also chill down a bit in terms of like requesting things for the sake of having them. Not having more means having it being better, you know. Let people that knows what they do research and develop it. That's why some technologies are where they are right now, because it took them 15 years to perfect them. Now everyone is benefiting from those 15 years of Logitech, right? It took them 2 years to implement it. So just more research, more development, more time. Keep believing in the project of esports and entertainment as such. I think is more than proven. So my 2 wish list things on the short term will be those.
Brent, any teaser that you can give us about what we're going to discover later tonight?
Oh, wow, yeah. We have some really cool, we have a new mouse, 2 new mice actually, and a new keyboard with some much anticipated technology. And I think, you know, again, like all of our Pro Series gear, it's just about trying to make competition better so that people can, like we say, keep playing.
Brent, Jacobo, Adam, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. It was amazing talking with you guys. Thank you all so much for watching as well. And we'll be back later for the rest of the evening. See you soon.